Welcome to this Hot Topics Roundtable. Today we're discussing how CIOs and technology leaders can accelerate and improve business change through continual improvement of business processes. My guests today are Rohan Davidson, Group CIO of Anglo American, and Georgina Owens, SVP for IT at DAZN. Welcome. If I could ask you both maybe to begin describing your organisations and what the IT role is there. Georgina, I'll start with you if I may.
Yep, so I am SVP for IT, as you mentioned, and essentially look after all of the IT services within the organisation, including all of the corporate systems and the data platform. As a streaming company, we consist of two halves. Half is focused on video and broadcast, and the other half is IT, with the two worlds merging together. So an interesting time.
Rohan, describe your organisation and what IT does for Anglo American.
Sure. I'm the Group CIO at Anglo American. Anglo American is a global diversified resources company. We've got about 64,000 employees, operate in 14 countries, and a lot of heavy industrial activity. So we own a lot of haul trucks, process plants. My remit in IT includes commercial systems, the IIT systems that support our plants and our haul trucks, and also business-led IT to the extent that we deliver projects to reach customers in different ways. That generally falls under my remit as well, although it's a mixed model.
That's a nice saying there. You said to reach customers in different ways. You're in streaming. Is that one of the biggest changes in business as a whole? Reaching customers has changed drastically.
I think for us, reaching customers through the end device, what we're doing is disrupting the traditional TV market. And so we have to be very aware that the consumption of media now is very much through iPads and phones and not through sitting in front of the TV as a family like it used to be. So being aware of customer habits and consumption is huge for us.
You're driving the second screen phenomenon.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Rohan, is that for you? You're reaching your customers in a different way to how a mining company, an energy, a utilities company did many years ago?
I think for us, we're a diversified industrial, and in a lot of cases our customers are traders and they don't tend to have high IT requirements. We have a large exception in our business though. We have a diamond subsidiary, and within that diamond business we have a retail diamond business, and the way people engage with high value purchases has changed dramatically over the years. Since the advent of the internet, people can research pricing online. Just the way you reach customers, where they reach out to you. Previously we expected them to come into stores to engage in that marketplace. Now we've reached them on screens. So that's one part of our business which is very important to us, where we're very active in terms of accessing end customers. For the rest of our business, not so much. Mainly it's around stabilising trading platforms and leveraging our scale to do things in a common way and reach our midstream customers.
So it's quite similar to those other big purchases we make in life, the house and the car, where now, I think one of your peers once told me 7 online visits before anyone even goes and looks at a car. It sounds like it's a similar sort of world.
Absolutely. Buying diamonds now is very similar to buying something like a car, where people have done all their research by the time they engage with a retail brand. So that has fundamentally changed the way we do our marketing in the diamonds business.
Georgina, do you find that people look around before purchasing your media, your outputs, or is it that your product offering is so unique? If I want to watch a particular type of race event or game, I've got to come to you guys because you've got it.
So we're very lucky where we are at the moment. I think we've orchestrated that luck, by having an amazing team around us, and so we are, the biggest in the world at the moment, and we fully intend to keep growing that so that we're not knocked off of that place, and therefore people have to come to us. Of course, there are niche sports that are available on other platforms, and there are other players in the market that they're trying to catch up, but no, we don't have that challenge at the moment.
You've mentioned how people make major purchases differently, how people engage with a sport differently. How is technology enabling the organisation to respond to that change? What is it you do day in, day out to enable the organisation to meet a new customer need?
There's a substantial amount of change in the technologies that are available to our industry, and a lot of that comes from adjacent industries. Mining has been around for a long time. Our company's over 100 years old. The actual process of finding, discovering and managing a resource hasn't changed a lot over that time. But technology has provided us a way to do it in such a way we can minimise our footprint, that we can do precision mining. So the big technology advancements for us are where we can learn more about what we're about to process, make early assessments as to whether it's commercially viable, and then run that through our industrial facilities. We haven't been able to do that in the past because we haven't been able to have a relationship with a resource on a really granular level. We can do that now by modelling, having digital twins, the ability to sense everything in the field in a way that we haven't been able to before. They're promising technologies for us. As we look across to adjacent industries like oil and gas or advanced manufacturing, we see things that are mature in the marketplace that we can bring into our own organisation, which improve the productivity of our business.
And do you look at adjacent industries, and what are they, and how do they sort of shape your market?
Yes, so I mean, there's some big ones out there like Spotify and Netflix, you know, where they're delivering non-live content. So the difference with us is that we're delivering live content, and for us, it's all about reliability and quality. You know, the moment when the ball is kicked and is just heading for the goal, you cannot afford for the screen to go black or to have the little whirring, you know, circle. So that's absolutely critical for us. But also around, you know, the speed of delivery. You know, if we have something called fast data that is used by betting apps. And so they can get information to the mobile very, very quickly. And because of the multi-screen habits that are happening, if someone's there placing a bet on an event, but they're watching, you know, the event on their app as well, there's something like a 25 seconds difference in the speed of delivery. So they're going to know the result on the mobile app before they see it. You know, and how do you balance that? We're never going to get that quick, but we've got to get a lot quicker than what we are today.
And to begin this change, to respond to those, how do you understand the organisation, its maturity, or maybe its desire for innovation to start driving that change?
I think for us, one of the things we're trying to do is change the way mining companies operate. We see a world where we have a much lower footprint, where we have less impact on, so we're more efficient in terms of what we do. We're more efficient from an energy perspective. We consume less water. We're a big drawer of fresh water in our operations. And to do that, we need to chart a future that involves new technologies. So I think for us, part of it are things that we see. We see things in adjacent industries, we see things through our supplier base, which we can use to make the company more efficient. And then some of them are charting this objective. We need to apply technologies to our business that don't exist at the moment. And this is one of the areas where cloud computing, the reach that we get from being able to scale up quickly and to do massive scale computations, there are opportunities that haven't presented to us before. So there's some areas where I think we have some significant opportunities to change the way that we operate. And some parts of that are led by the IT organisation. Generally, the technologies we see that we can employ into our business to make it better are led, they're IT-led projects. And a lot of it is business-led. To the extent that they want to do things in a different way in future, you chart that backwards, and we're an enabler for that process.
Is that a similar experience?
So for us, it's really customer-led. And I think, you know, if you look at the consumer habits, people want personalisation. They don't call it personalisation, but, you know, they want everything to be tailored for them. They don't want to spend a lot of time searching or looking for their content. They want it to be presented to them. They want to be reminded about it. So it's keeping up with the new features that are required, alongside what I'd call the BAU features that you've got to develop as well. And in fact, one of the things that we were tossing around the other week is, do you need to have essentially two sets of development teams? One that's working on all of the new features that are being demanded by the customer, while you've got the kind of basic platform, hygienic stuff that you've got to do as well. So it's really challenging from that point of view.
And you mentioned there about business-led programs, and I was writing a piece last week about how that's increasing, and that CIOs and IT is becoming more brokerage. Do you find more of that you're working very closely in collaboration with your peers across the business to improve the business, because they've got some ideas and you've got some technology and you've got some ideas, and together you can come up with solutions?
I think absolutely. There's a portion of the role which is delivering the services you were yesterday more efficiently, and that can be done without really tight business engagement. But then if you're trying to provide new transformative technologies, you need to do that in lockstep with the business. So for a lot of the things that we're trying to do, particularly where you're taking something that you already do and wrapping it in data, doing some kind of product wrapping, or if we're trying to reach our customers or traders in a different way, that has to be at the core of the business. And my view is that it's okay to have different approaches to IT strategy where you're trying to digitalize an existing business. It's okay to have IT-led transformation. That's sometimes the most efficient way to go about it, and you see things that others don't. Where you're trying to transform your business, that really needs to be led by line of business. So in our industry, we'll provide a lot of the enabling technologies, we'll create development models that are fit for purpose to help deliver those capabilities that our business is seeking. But often they have to lead it. So we're doing, for instance, in our diamond business, we're doing an interesting industry-leading blockchain program, creating a single immutable ledger for diamonds that pass through our industry for all market participants. Fascinating project, but you couldn't do that as an IT project. You just wouldn't have the ability to connect the production components of our business and our customers in the same way. That needs to be led as a separate line of business.
And are your lines of business and IT teams working much more closely together?
Yeah, I mean, we are a technology sporting company, or a sporting technology company, and every day, we kind of have this debate of which one are we, and the truth is that they are both so very closely connected. It's difficult to separate them out. So, we were talking last week about the product service lifecycle, and we need to be able to link the product ideas all the way through to service delivery and ongoing improvement. And that means that you have all got to work very, very closely in that end-to-end life cycle.
How do you do that? Do you have an orchestration across your business that does that? Do you have a PMO that manages it? How do you give that effect?
Have we got it right yet? No, because we're moving so very, very quickly. I think the key is that we ensure that right at the beginning, when we come up with the ideas for the products, that we're already thinking about how we're going to implement that and support it, and that the conversation, and also very much the data we're going to extract from that, because very often data is forgotten about when you're thinking early on in the product life cycle. So it's just about collaboration and communication end to end, but it's really, really challenging at the pace we're moving at.
Sure, I think it's one of the areas we struggle as well. We tend to try to orchestrate it. Works better for us if we federate it through our lines of business, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's okay. But there's a lot of activity in trying to understand what these new opportunities are, what the right technology fit is, and trying to get those projects to stick is a real challenge for us as well.
Yeah.
And you were saying before the camera started rolling, you've got the beauty of no legacy technology, but you've dealt with legacy throughout your career. But how empowering is it for you and your team to not have to go into those conversations you just described to Rohan there, not having to say, but we've got to work around this legacy?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it gives you huge opportunities to not have to think about how you're going to integrate to very old and clunky systems. But I think the thing that we have to be very careful of is that we don't create those legacy systems and that technical debt ourselves now, because we're moving at such a pace, and it's quite easy, as we all know. And if you're working with people who haven't had that legacy experience, they won't know what bad looks like. if that makes sense. So, I think we have to be very aware of that.
I can't imagine what it's like to be in a business with no legacy technology. My company's 102 years this year. I've got a museum of computing from around our operations that sits in my office. And a lot of what we struggle with is just trying to tackle what we already have and make it better, or trying to drag that into new hosting opportunities, change the software landscape. The majority of effort in our organisation, I think, is managing and transforming legacy estate. It's a particular challenge.
It's quite liberating.
I can imagine.
Having always been in a place where there's legacy to worry about, it is quite liberating to not think about it. But I think, like I say, you have to kind of keep pinching yourselves and say, remember what that's like, don't create it again.
Yes. But I guess there's no excuses not to try a whole bunch of things that are out there, whereas sometimes our legacy makes it a little more comfortable. We can operate the business that we have with what we already have installed. We don't have to try everything that comes through the door.
I think that's a great point you raised there as well, isn't it? That cloud's over a decade old already. We're already creating legacy, and it's very very easy to fall into the same traps, just as we did with all the other previous sort of great iterations of technology, ERP, etc., etc. And that's a big learning curve for a lot of these smaller, younger, more agile businesses, isn't it? Is to not create a legacy now.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is something that we have to be aware of and be conscious of, I think.
And how challenging is it, whether it's explaining legacy or whether it's explaining the art of the new, to manage expectations? Because people can run away with it's all going to be brilliant tomorrow once this is turned on. How do you as leaders manage those expectations both up the organisation and down the organisation?
I think everybody sees the opportunities that digitalisation presents, and as you look to other industries, you see that the ability to connect everything, process automation's radically changing some industries, particularly financial services at the moment. In our industry, machine robotics is an area that holds great promise, particularly in terms of minimising impact to our people. We injured over 300 people in line of business last year, and we should be able to change the way we operate in such a way that we're not exposed to the same type of hazards. So people see elements of what's available to us, and I think there's a real mix of their understanding of what technologies can be employed and how useful those technologies are. I find the supply landscape challenging. Suppliers are where we get some of our best ideas. Some industries, for instance, we're doing a whole bunch of work at the moment around advanced imaging of rocks, but there isn't a big industry within mining to drive the R&D there, but in medicine there's a massive R&D budget for advanced imaging. So if we can somehow reach across and leverage that R&D and bring it into our industry, that's great. But often our business leaders' expectations outpace what's actually possible. So trying to manage that is a real challenge. Particularly when you're operating across geographies. People have pet projects, some of those are great, often they're not. And just trying to work out where those sweet spots are and how to bring those ideas into the business can be a particular challenge. Expectations are always difficult to manage.
You're smiling at pet projects, so it sounds like you've had a few.
Well, no, I mean, I think, it's been said a lot, but fail fast is absolutely important. And, I feel quite privileged that we have a leadership team that are quite happy to stand up and say, we had an idea, it's not working, move on. Also, we have a culture of not being perfect, which I think is also quite refreshing, and that probably comes from not being the massive enterprise, being the smaller, more nimble organisation, and so having a roadmap with 300 things on, saying that's what we're going to do for this year, but saying, well, if we do 200 of them, then we've succeeded, and we're going to look at our success, not look at our failure of the 100 that we didn't do. We have that culture, we have that environment, and and it's built into the entire company, and I think that really makes a difference to the way that we achieve results.
And I couldn't agree more about failure. Failure's fine. I think the key is a lot of people, when they start new projects, don't set the exit conditions for the project. So you try something that doesn't work and people will persist longer than they should, and you lose the opportunity to iterate, go back and rethink, change the approach. But all successful organisations have a real appetite for trying new things, allowing failure, allowing the process of learning from that failure, and then adapting and changing that process. Absolutely agree.
How important then is cloud computing, not so much as a technology, but as a way that it changes the culture of the organisation to perhaps be more innovative and think about how it improves its business processes?
So I think as a cloud native organisation, it takes away a lot of the thinking that maybe engineers used to have to do when you had traditional, data centres and on-premise.
Your cloud providers give you another dev team, effectively.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, huge dev team, yeah.
I think for us, big opportunity for us. We haven't had cloud in the past, and we've operated for a long time, so we know how to operate without cloud. There are some things that we want to be able to do that only cloud can allow us to do. We're doing some interesting work in our geospatial teams at the moment, where one of the big costs for us is drilling holes, understanding what's in those holes, logging the cores, using that to build a digital twin, a model of what's under the ground. It's not much different to weather forecasting, trying to work out what it is you're looking at under the ground. The ability to leverage cloud computing means we can do modelling much faster, whereas previously we used to run advanced models over this information. They'd take a couple of days. You might be able to run 3 or 4 at a time. We can now run them in about half an hour, and so in the same time as we might run a half a dozen, we can now run a couple of hundred, which means you can do much better scenario planning around what your development pathways are going to look like for an operation. So that's a new opportunity for us. One of the challenges, I think, is that cloud presents opportunities for others that we've taken for granted over time. So one of the barriers to entry in our business had been to operate at scale and operate in different countries. You need ERPs and payroll, and you need a lot of technical infrastructure. And now the junior entrants can do all of that through cloud platforms. So there's an opportunity that hasn't existed in the past for them to move into our space, and we need to be able to stay nimble and be able to outpace them. That's a new development for us. It's presented by cloud. I think we have the same experience around our supplier base, that as you invest in analytics and as you try new things in the cloud and work with the supplier base, they look across different industries. They have huge teams that do this work, and they present really interesting ideas to you. Some different approaches to things that we want to try. Sometimes we get ideas that we've not considered before through our supplier base, and that's new to us. That really hasn't existed in the historical supply chain for companies like ours.
I think that's the next evolution of digital transformation, if you like. I mean, people are still talking about digital transformation. I think it's now digital enablement. Most people have transformed. How do they now create an organisation? How do we now create an organisation that enables us to stay on top of all of these advances that are coming from our suppliers? Whether we're using the suppliers' platform or whether we're using their services.
It's creating it. So in a way, then your businesses are creating those pop-up challenges, the way that, as you say, an entrant could. You can go, let's try this, let's spin a business up and see how that scenario works. Is that a possible solution?
Yeah, I think, we're a small company, but there are smaller companies that are coming, and because of that, they're going to come in, and they're going to come in with new ideas, and they're going to be challenging us. And even though we're at the forefront, and it's being aware and able to react and respond to that very, very quickly, without going and buying them all, which is also a solution, I guess.
Absolutely. I think to be able to sift through what's going to work and what isn't.
Yeah.
All sorts of ideas come through your supply chain. And some of them are great ideas and a lot of them aren't. And just being able to quickly work through that process of what's a good fit. If it is a good fit, how do you industrialize that concept and get it out there? I think that's the challenge for all of us, developing organisations that can engage with supply chain, understand the competitive landscape, understand what those opportunities are. Not everybody's cut out for that, and I think that's an area we wrestle with, particularly given the geographic complexity of what we're trying to achieve.
And you mentioned how your geospatial teams have grasped cloud and are doing some really innovative things. How do you use that to sort of seed cloud further into the organisation, to demonstrate its value, to help the organisation migrate to those parts of the business that may not have even thought about whether cloud could offer them some value?
I think it's a great question. Success builds on itself, and there's nothing like a good success story. So in this particular case, we've always known that hyperscale computing out there in the cloud has been a big opportunity for us. Anytime you're doing any modelling or any computational intensive operations, that is just going to make things faster. And that's one of the areas where I think all heavy industry has been quite slow on the uptake, understanding what the opportunity is. Once you get a few success stories in, then those teams will go and evangelise for you. So rather than saying, I'm an IT guy, here's a new technology, here is what we can do in the heart of your business process, having it work the other way around, we've found some opportunities, there must be others out there. And these teams go talking and engaging with the rest of the business on the opportunities they've found. That's been our experience.
So do you have the challenge of shadow IT groups going and starting up their own little cloud initiatives that you have to then deal with?
A little bit. I mentioned that we're in a mixed model, so in some areas everything's centralised, in some areas it's not. I think shadow IT is a challenge for all companies. Basically, we're a company of engineers and people are just trying to get things done. Sometimes they're technology solutions and sometimes they're IT. So that really comes down to the engagement model. I think the key is engaging them, understanding what they're trying to do, what we can bring to the party. But from my perspective, shadow IT is just fine as long as everybody understands the things that are really non-negotiable. Application platforms, the suppliers that you're working with. We've got an all-in bet on data analytics. It's one of the big opportunities for us. And we come from a place where we don't have a data lake. We want to build exactly one data lake, so we can't have everybody going out there and doing their own thing. We need to do that in a really prescribed format and make sure that we populate that thing only once. So we're perfectly happy for people to operate in the periphery and try and do different things with different technologies as long as they understand what the rules of the road are. But I think everybody struggles with mixed delivery models.
And that must be where actually your two industries are identical, in that you are running organisations full of very clever, very motivated people who can quickly spin up something themselves. They've got as much, they may be a media professional or, as you say, an engineer. They've actually got quite similar technical abilities to many of your own team. So that's both a challenge and an opportunity, isn't it? To take some of their ideas and feed it back into IT, but also to make sure that they're complying with certain things, because we don't want silos, or we don't want compliance issues in our organisations. Would I be right in there that there's a similarity in your sectors?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to inhibit anything, and new ideas and innovation can come from anywhere. I think what we need to do is to, I mean, you talked about rules of engagement, and process. Although don't use the process word because it scares people, but just to have the environment and the ecosystem to enable, what used to be called shadow IT and what used to be seen as a bad thing, whereas actually what we need to do is we need to make it a good thing and encourage it.
And I think having differentiation of your IT is fine as well. In my area, we're doing some really fascinating work in a field called advanced process control. Some concepts that have been around since the late 80s, very heavily used in oil and gas, but new to mining, and where we take old pieces of infrastructure, you have existing control systems, and you put kind of hypervisory control systems over the top of them, and they just run plants better. They think faster. You can build complex models. You can leverage edge computing to run massively complex computations to run plants better than a human operator might. But you have to put rigorous controls around those things. You don't want people fiddling and experimenting with those things. You want to know that what you've created works in a particular way and works reliably and consistently in a particular way. So that's fine, and that can sit alongside very innovative, quick, fast-moving projects in, say, an analytics space, where if it doesn't work, you can throw that concept out and try something else for a similar outcome. It's perfectly fine having two approaches exist in the same organisation, just as long as you're clear on what each is and why they differentiate. And again, it really comes back to the engagement model, engaging people to say there are different reasons you tackle these things, different reasons you engage with cloud suppliers or introduce new technologies into your business, and building that engagement model around it to give it effect.
And edge computing and edge data centers, it must be a huge opportunity for your sectors now, because the cloud is fantastic, but sometimes you just need to be able to respond to things. There might be something phenomenal going on in a particular stadium or at a particular plant. You would get better results from having that more local. Is that something that your sectors are looking at and beginning to understand?
Certainly a big opportunity for us. The first stage of cloud transformation for most industrial companies, I think, has been to take your back office and move it out. Move your ERPs, move your file storage, all the productivity applications, they're generally all cloud enabled now, and that's really quite straightforward. That's a well-trodden path. That leaves you with industrial infrastructure, things that are on site. And often we haven't been able to move those because we have connectivity issues, or we just want a level of control and rigor around those that we don't see by moving them into the cloud. Being able to take cloud concepts and introduce edge computing into your own industrial environment means we can eliminate that level of legacy across our business. And I think if I think of what we're going to be pursuing over the next 5 or 10 years, a lot of it will be uplifting the technical capability of our industrial infrastructure through edge computing.
I think for us it's, I mentioned it earlier, it's all about latency and how we tackle that. And we work with very big content delivery network suppliers who are extremely experienced in this world, and learning from them and working very closely with them to constantly improve our performance is key for us.
We touched earlier on shadow IT, and how important has cybersecurity become in your two sectors? Has it become board level, and therefore there's a greater awareness of cybersecurity across your organisations?
I think we all try to architect for security. We've always done it. Cloud computing presents new challenges because a lot of your crown jewels are now sitting in somebody else's infrastructure. It means you need to think differently about where you put them and what you understand of them. Certainly in our organisation, cybersecurity is board level concern. It's, we track 13 major risks across the organisation. Security and the risk of data breach is one of those 13, so it's a top level risk of ours. But I think the challenge for me is that the threat landscape evolves so rapidly. So we architect for security, but what we understand of security and what tomorrow's threats are going to be can often differ over that timescale. And most recently, there's been a focus on personal data. GDPR puts certain obligations on us, particularly means we're all a little more squeamish about the loss of data where it relates to personal data. And so everything that we do, and whether it's major waterfall architected internal projects or rapid agile projects in the analytics space, all of it goes through an architectural assessment which considers both cybersecurity and data privacy aspects. That's how we're managing it, but again, it's an area that just changes so rapidly. So it's always going to be an area of some concern.
And we're the same. We have a very strong team that we work with that works alongside the business and the technology, because piracy is huge for us, and we need to be very aware of all of the new innovative ways that people can try and get into our systems and basically take our content and then do something else with that.
Do you do a lot of red teaming? Have teams try to take your own content?
We do have that, and certainly regionally, because we're in 9 different countries, each regional has different ways and approaches that they have to think about as well. So we have to look at it regionally, as well as globally.
Interesting.
So there's a cultural way of trying to hack content in many ways.
Yes, there is.
Finally, we're talking about how to continually improve organisations, improve their business processes and innovation. Looking ahead over the next year, 18 months, how would you each try and improve your organisations? What's the thing you'd really like to drive an improvement on?
I talked a little about what we're trying to do in terms of transforming mining, and we can see it. We know what that future looks like. We know the technologies. We know a lot of those technologies aren't in our business currently, and that's a path we need to tread. So for for us, we're trying hard not to get distracted, to make sure that applying those technologies means that we need to do certain things. A lot of that relates to computing and building out an analytics platform. There's a lot of work we have ahead in sensing technologies, and so we're really active in that space. Often it's easy to get distracted because new technologies come to you through suppliers. So we really go through a process of understanding, well, what's coming to us, what's the opportunity, is it part of the grand plan? If not, how do you assess it and discard it quickly and move on, rather than getting distracted on those projects? I think that's a core opportunity for us, just to focus on those maybe 200 or 300 things that we need to do over the next few years, just to build that future business that we expect, the one with the lower carbon footprint, the lower water footprint, high levels of automation, so we're hurting fewer people. It's difficult to build out that program and sell that program if you're continually changing paths. So that's a focus of ours.
So I think similar. We have growth. We've publicly stated that we'll be in 20 countries by 2020. I suspect that will be very early 2020, and that target will move considerably by the end of 2020. Change fatigue, because we've got the growth, and then alongside that we have all of these wonderful partnerships and deals that our commercial team are doing, and that does mean that sometimes we change direction. We just last week we had 3 number 1 priorities. In fact, we do talk about it a bit like being the charts, because priorities change and go up and down, and the teams sometimes struggle with that, because they're committed to a program of work, and then when we tell them to move that aside and work on something else, they can get a little bit frustrated. So demonstrating to them that we're moving forward all the time, even though they might be stopping and starting things, I think is a real challenge.
Rohan Davidson, Georgina Owens, thank you so much for sharing your insights and for a fantastic discussion.
It's been a pleasure, thank you.